So you just saw a little snippet before you saw the big one. But my name is Anna Oguoma-Richards, and I will be presenting on Wind in the Wilderness. I'm really excited to talk about this play. It was so beautiful to read, and also gut-wrenching. So learned a lot, but let's go on. So this is Alice Childress. She was born in 1912, originally from South Carolina, between the ages of 0 to 8, and then she moved to Harlem, New York to live with her grandmother after her parents separated. And I thought that was kind of different just because her parents separated, so it's not like they died. So I was like, okay, well, she went to go move all the way to New York to live with her grandmother, who was actually the dual service slave. So she had no formal education, no background in that sense. And so, yeah, you will see that in a lot of Childress play, you will see that she formalized her surroundings in Harlem, New York. So I think that's a great read to understand that we were able to understand her, get to know her, and get to know her stories because of familiarity that she knew. So when I was reading Wind in the Wilderness, I was able to picture Harlem, New York. I was able to picture the surroundings and everything. And I've been there before, but still. She allowed a lot of her roles to examine race and social issues. A lot of them were created between the years of were released, but even then created between were released between the years of 1950 to 1970s, and a lot of them were actually paced in that time too. So yeah, so she definitely pulled from a lot of the Black arts movement, and she was the Black arts movement is a second go around from the Renaissance, so you can definitely tell that she incorporated stylistic and artistic forms in her stories, and I will get onto that a little further down below. But much of her work is to display the have-nots in a society, and that's particularly what I like. And what I love the most about reading about her is that she targeted in her plays. She targeted common people. She wrote about common people. She wrote about the people that don't actually get written about. And so, last time I wrote about Rachel, and that's a story that I've never really heard about. But it also made me think about this, where, womanhood, the intersectionality of it all isn't talked about a lot, but also is not talked about within the Black community. And that's what she focuses on. And the disadvantages and disintegration of social classes. And, yeah. So I like that within her work, she makes sure to tie into common people. And a quote that I really liked by her was, "We are uncommonly and marvelously intricate in thought and action. Our problems are most complex and too often silently born." And yeah. So the play synopsis. So I got this from the encyclopedia. I liked the way that they explained it and went about it, and it was kind of straight to the point to where you would understand it easier. But Wine in the Wilderness, I keep messing up on that part, by Alice Childress is a one-act play about the perception of Black women among the African American community. The play is set during a race riot in Harlem, in New York City in the 1960s. Bill Jameson, an artist, is working on a triptych entitled Wine in the Wilderness, and a triptych, it doesn't really explain here, but it is a 3-piece subject art. So it's 3 pieces, and that consists of one kind of subject matter that is going on. This series of this painting is meant to express Bill's statement about Black womanhood. The first painting of a young Black girl is meant to represent the innocence of childhood. The middle painting is of a beautiful African American woman in African clothing, meant to represent Bill's ideal Black woman, whom he refers to as an African queen, or the wine in the wilderness. For the third painting, which he hasn't yet started, Bill is looking for a down and out woman to model for his image of what society has made of our woman. I just had a little brain fart there, but I was drawn into wanting to read about this piece just because it was about Black women, and I felt like that's something that doesn't get talked about a lot. And I was fortunate to have been able to read 2 pieces now on Black women. And I love studying the intersectionality, and I love studying the disadvantages of Black women and what we face and what we go through. And also, I was so excited to read this and get into the nitty-gritty of what he was talking about. And I didn't know what a triptych was before. And so I learned something new. And I love how Childress incorporated art. So we're going through the Black art movement, and she also incorporated Bill Jameson to be an artist. something to look to when talking about the Black arts movement. So two major themes and arguments that I targeted on was classism within the African American community, classism meaning prejudice or against or in favor of people belonging to a particular social class, and two, Black womanhood and sexism. Black womanhood to me, the state or condition of being a woman and going through the journey from girl to woman, and sexism meaning prejudice, stereotyping, or discrimination typically against women on the basis of sex. And you'll see through on that how it highlights and gets deeper into that. So the evidence that I was able to gain from this work was honestly amazing. I learned so much. I think the best thing about reading these plays and reading it during the Black arts movement is to find the intricacies and the symbolism that they connect. Like, you'll see one friend who connects one thing and then you'll have yourself connect to another thing. So I just think it's kind of amazing that you're able to grasp that whole big picture, and like you're also able to find different meanings. And so with my evidence for classism, 1, the room also reflects an interest in other darker people of the world: a Chinese incense burner Buddha, an American Indian feathered war helmet, a Mexican serape, a Japanese fan, a West Indian travel poster. So basically, within this work, Bill Jameson is a middle class, educated Black man, and he clearly, so you're able to see that Bill Jameson, he is a middle class, educated man, and you can definitely tell that he dabbles in a little bit of everything. So he's into different cultures. And so I thought that was interesting, but you can tell from the fact that he's entered in different cultures because of the Chinese incense, the American Indian feathered war helmet, the Mexican serape, that he's a man of class. And it may not be high class, but he's a man of middle class. And so that just kind of stuck out to me. And it just told me about the just classist, he dabbles in wanting to identify with that of darker cultures. And it actually even says that in the play. 2, there are significant moments of self-consciousness as Cynthia, Sonny, and Bill realize they don't have an old-timer's name. They don't know old-timer's name. So in this, to give a little bit of backstory and why I thought this was classist, because Cynthia, Sonny, and Bill have known old-timers for a very long time. And I find it funny that old-timers, his name kind of sounds like Alzheimer's in a way, like he kind of forgot to tell them. And I don't know if that's a big, symbolic thing that she wanted to do with their names, but I find it to be interesting that his name is Old-timers, and it kind of sounds like Alzheimer's. And what happened is, we don't know how long Cynthia, Sonny, and Bill have known him, but it was like, you guys are of a higher class, and Old-timers is not. He's of a poor, bourgeois, lower class, and you never once asked his name. You say that you're educated, you say you're all of this, but you never once asked this man who comes to you for help, who comes to talk to you, who comes to eat with you, who comes to just be with you guys, what his name was. And I found that to be interesting and just a little weird. 3, you treat me like a nigger. That's what. I'd rather be called one than treated that way. This one is from Tommy, who is talking to Bill, who went through a series of disrespecting her and saying different names, talking a bit trash about her, talking like this, talking like that. And you just find out that he's rude. He is sexist, and he talks crazy, and he thinks that he knows the Black woman. And I find that to be the most interesting thing, thinking that you know the Black woman, but you don't. And she's basically saying, you treat me of a lower class. Nigger me was to demean the Black man, the Black woman. And in this is a classist remark from Tommy to Bill, saying, you treat me of a lower class. You treat me like I'm an idiot. You treat me like I'm non-smart. And she'd rather be called one than treated that way. And yeah. So the next place I'm going to is the evidence for Black womanhood and sexism. So 1, there she is, wine in the wilderness, Mother Africa, regal, Black womanhood, her noblest form. So I found this to be beautiful. I was like, I would definitely want to be this. I would want to be wine in the wilderness. I want to be sleek. I want to be looked at. I want to be stared at. I want to be that woman. Mother Africa, regal, Black womanhood. That sounds beautiful. But it sounds beautiful, but it sounds idealized. And Bill doesn't even know what this woman looks like. You're idealizing a woman that you don't know. You're imagining a woman that you don't know. And behind the story, he is also taking into account that that's the type of woman that he wants. Yet he's never met her. It's just picking pieces of what you want in a woman and thinking that you can create that, and then downing other women at the expense of it. Now, I'm not saying that it's impossible for him to find a woman like this, but I find it interesting that a lot of times men talk on what they want from a woman, and yet what are you bringing? How can you talk so much about a woman, talk so much about her and what she should bring and what she should exude and how she should act and all that stuff, and idealize the form of what you would want in a woman. 2, she's going to be the type of chick that is grassroots. No, not grassroots. I mean, she's underneath the grassroots. The lost woman, what the society is made out of our women. She's as far from an African queen as a woman can get and still be a female. She's as close to the bottom you can get without cracking up. She's ignorant, unfeminine, coarse, rude, vulgar, a poor dumb chick that's had her behind kicked until it's numb. And that's the sad part is she ain't together. There's no hope for her. I was disgusted by this because this is the third piece to his art piece. This is the third piece to the whole, and I found it disgusting that you went through a line of women from adolescent to beauty to then saying that you want to replicate and find a woman who is like this. Who's even to say that a woman even exists like this? And it's demeaning of them to think that a woman would act like this, and that's sexist to think that he can go out into his city of Harlem, New York, which is what he did, and go and find a woman like that, making Cynthia and Sonny find a woman who exists like this. I find that to be so disgustingly rude. I find it to be demeaning of Black womanhood. I find it to be funny that we are supposed to pull our brothers up. We're supposed to pull our Black brothers and sisters up. Yet, Black men, I find it so interesting enough that it feels like they're always downing Black women. That you say that women are supposed to act this way and that way and this way and that way, and yet you go into your very city and find a woman like this. Why would you even want to create something like that? Why would you want someone to have this plastered on their wall? That in the first quote, you talk about a woman of regal, all of these things, what you idealize. And then why would you want a woman, and that woman in number 1 is in Africa, where this woman, you said that you can just find them in Harlem, New York. It just was not rubbing right with me. 3, you have to let the Black man have this manhood again. You have to give it back, Tommy. With Tommy replying, I didn't take it from him. Now, how am I going to give it back? And so this one had to do with Cynthia, who is Sonny's wife, came to talk to her, and this one was just kind of rubbed me the wrong way. It's sexist for you to think that I have to give the manhood, I have to give the masculinity. And I said in my paper that it's so often said that we need to give masculinity back. We need to do this. We need to make them feel like a man. It's not within the woman's duty to do that. It's not within the woman's duty to make sure that the man feels manly enough to feel confident. And I find it interesting too that like Cynthia is saying this, yet your friend's man, your man's friend, Bill, talks demeaning of women. And she stood there knowing how Bill views her, and still is saying to her, knowing that Tommy likes Bill and is interested in him, but you need to give the man his manhood again. You need to give it back. And she's saying, well, I didn't take it, so how am I supposed to do that? And I just find that to be super interesting and just a reflection of womanhood and the struggles and the intersectionality of having to struggle with being Black, also being a woman, also making sure that you give masculinity back, make the man feel like he's a man, also just dealing with remarks on how a woman should be. So yeah. In my last and final slide, I talked about how I believe that this play is private. I believe that this play was for the Black community to listen to play, to read, to watch. That this has to do with the fact that we need to fix our own community. We need to upbring our own community before we start going out and saying to the world we should create our own community. Because right there in front of us, men struggle to realize that women have a place in this community. And I found it to be private just because it wasn't something supposed to be publicized for the white man, and it was performed on stage. And the connection to Black arts movement, there's a lot of connections where it was Bill who was in his art form, he was doing such and such, he was studying this, the triptych, and then this form of art, the Black arts movement, it gave a site of knowledge to how they need to treat women, how they need to view women, and the artistic style of how they can view women and how you often don't.